Odličen primer je sodelovanje med Slovenskim centrom odličnosti Vesolje SI in Univerzo Jomo Kenjata v Nairobiju. Z uporabo satelitskih posnetkov bo projekt lokalnim skupnostim zagotovil informacije, kje in kako naj svoje kmetijske prakse in rabe vode prilagodijo skrajnim vremenskim dogodkom. Slovenija je zainteresirana za krepitev gospodarskega sodelovanja z afriškimi državami in veseli me, da je sodelovanja med slovenskim in gospodarstvi držav Afrike vedno več. Še naprej si bomo prizadevali za odpravljanje ovir, ki zavirajo gospodarsko sodelovanje. V teku je reorganizacija slovenskih diplomatskih in konzularnih predstavništev, da bi del te mreže preusmerili na nove potencialne trge. Konferenca Dan Afrike je v tem smislu platforma za prepoznavanje izzivov in priložnosti za zasebni sektor in podjetja ter iskanje možnosti za trdnejše sodelovanje na področju zelenega prehoda. Je tudi odlična priložnost za izmenjavo dobrih praks in pa za učenje drug od drugega. Gospe in gospodje, evropske in afriške države so zavezane agendi 2030 za trajnostni razvoj in Pariškemu sporazumu. Po mnenju Slovenije mora biti sporočilo prihajajočega vrha Organizacije združenih narodov o prihodnosti zelo jasno. Brez učinkovitejšega ukrepanja in sodelovanja na področju podnebnih sprememb ne bo varne prihodnosti. Slovenija kot članica Varnostnega sveta Organizacije združenih narodov v obdobju 2024-2025 namenja veliko pozornosti podnebni in vodni varnosti, saj smo trdno prepričani, da brez upoštevanja okoljskih vprašanj ni mogoče niti učinkovito preprečevati konfliktov, niti doseči trajnega miru. Ministrstvo za zunanje in evropske zadeve je tudi v tej luči podprlo že drugo usposabljanje o podnebni varnosti, ki ga organizira Slovenski center za izobraževanje in usposabljanje za sodelovanje v mirovnih operacijah in ki je tudi tokrat zbudilo veliko zanimanja med udeleženci iz afriških držav. Zelo mi je všeč, da naša konferenca Dan Afrike poteka tudi vzporedno z mednarodnim forumom Čebele za ljudi, planet in mir s fokusom na Afriki. In s forumom obeležujemo Mednarodni dan čebel in opozarjamo na neprecenljivo vlogo čebel in drugih opraševalcev za prehransko varnost ljudi in zeleni prehod. Trajnega miru ni brez družbenega in gospodarskega razvoja ter brez spoštovanja človekovega dostojanstva in človekovih pravic. Velja pa tudi obratno. Brez trajnega miru ni družbenega in gospodarskega razvoja. Slovenija s tem vodilom deluje tudi kot članica ECOSOC. Prepričana sem, da bodo sporočila prihajajočega vrha Združenih narodov o prihodnosti septembra letos upoštevala ta celoviti pristop. Spoštovani, zbrali smo se tu v prenovljenem kulturnem centru Rog. V preteklosti je v tej stavbi domovala tovarna koles. In mnogi Slovenci se danes še vedno vozijo z rogovimi kolesi. Objekt je lep primer recikliranja in ponovne uporabe stare stavbe. Kulturni center Rog torej simbolizira trajnosten in bolj zelen razvoj. Spominja nas na prispevek industrije k družbenemu in gospodarskemu napredku ter nam hkrati kaže, kako starim objektom vdihniti novo življenje. Ni dvoma, da morata Evropa in Afrika pri zelenem prehodu sodelovati uravnoteženo in enakopravno. In danes smo se zbrali tu, da izmenjamo izkušnje in vzpostavimo potrebne povezave. Pa začnimo, želim nam uspešen dan. Hvala.
We shall start with the first panel, with the leaders panel, and I kindly invite distinguished guests to the podium. Ms. Fajon, would you join us first? And then I ask Ms. Klakočar Zupančič, President of the National Assembly of the Republic of Slovenia, to take her seat. Honorable Donatilla Mukabalisa, Speaker of the Chamber of Deputies of the Republic of Rwanda. Honorable Moses Kunkuyu Kalongashawa, Minister of Information and Digitalisation. Please join us here. And Ms. Emanuela, European Union Special Representative for the Sahel. Warmly welcome. Okay. Thank you. Good morning once again. For a warm-up, I would kindly ask all the panelists to answer a very rather simple or perhaps complicated question in one sentence. What does it mean, green transition? What does it mean to you and your country? In one sentence. Ms. Mukabalisa, can I ask you to come with the answer first? So, how important? Yeah, it works.
Thank you, Moderator. In simple terms, the green transition is the necessity to invest in clean energy, shifting from various polluting practices to more environment-friendly use of the planet resources. This goes for all sectors, from energy, transport, industry, agriculture, etc.
Thank you. I will continue with the President of our National Assembly.
So well, it is really difficult, actually, to answer in one sentence, but I will try. For me, green transition is a shift towards economically sustainable growth and an economy that no longer relies on fossil fuels and excessive use of natural resources, but instead employs a growing share of renewables. Of course, this means a lot of adjustments and changes in our way of life, but above all, changes in our mindsets.
Thank you very much. Minister Kalongashawa, what comes to mind when I ask you how important is green transition to you, to your country?
Thank you very much. Speaking from a point of experience, as one of the countries that has suffered the diverse effects of climate change, discussing green energy transition is essential to ensure that moving into the future, we have resilient and sustainable economies, promoting the well-being of our people in anticipation for further shocks that may come. So, talking about green transition is a topic that is essential for countries that have suffered the diverse effects of climate change.
Thank you. Mr. Fajon, Minister Fajon, please.
Thank you. In short, we all here face extreme weather conditions all around the globe, including in my country, or in our country, Slovenia. So green transition is not a choice anymore, it's a must.
Thank you. Special Representative Delere.
Thank you very much. Well, of course I could answer for my own country, which is Italy, my country of origin, but I would like to answer with an European answer regarding the future of the Europeans, and we are all very much involved in trying to find sustainable solutions for the green transition, but also the approach of the European Union towards our partners, in particular Africa, in which I think the key words are system, because we need to create a system to promote the green transition. Until now, we have been quite scattered in our interventions, and now we have to really create a sustainability in what we do in terms of actions. And also, of course, as you have very rightly said in your title of this particular fantastic Africa Day, link development to security, which is essential to solve the problems, because everything is related, also in terms of social impact of what the climate change, for instance, is doing. And the need for a green transition is related to everything. This is why I repeat, our approach is to create a system. And of course, we want also to be the ones, according to our experience, who share our lessons learned and make sure that we all together, Africa and Europe, go towards a proper green future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Speaker, Rwanda is a leader in green transition on African continent and globally. But what are the main challenges your country faces, in particularly in green energy transition?
Thank you, Moderator. Before talking about challenges, let me talk very briefly about what have been done by my country in terms of green transition. In collaboration with and the support of different development partners, major achievements have been recorded, notably in terms of biodiversity conservation, environment crime investigation, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and climate finance mobilization, to name but a few. We have put in place the National Environment and Climate Change Policy that reaffirms the country's commitment to address climate change and its resolve to lessen the potential hardships that climate change may pose to the sustainable development of our country. We have put in place institutional and legal framework for environment and climate change, which served as a founding pillar for all the required reforms. We have also launched a carbon market framework, which, as you know, enables climate polluters to fund projects that reduce carbon emission in other countries. We have launched the Green Growth and Climate Resilience Strategy to support the development of green industry and avoid deforestation, land and water resources use management. We have also launched drones in combating environmental crimes. Those drones collect information, conduct inspection for prevention and investigation. There is Ireme Invest that was launched by His Excellency Paul Kagame, the President of the Republic of Rwanda, at the COP 27 to mobilize resources to finance the implementation of public sector-led projects that align with climate change mitigation or adaptation. We control soil and landscape restoration. We have put in place different initiatives contributing towards the land degradation neutrality, wetlands management, air pollution control, to name but a few. Concerning the legislation aspect, the Parliament of Rwanda voted different laws such as environment law, law governing land, law on single-use plastic prohibition, the biodiversity law, forestry law, law governing water resources management, law governing the preservation of air quality and prevention of air pollution in Rwanda, law governing national parks and nature reserves, etc. The Parliament of Rwanda ratified also different multilateral environment agreements. The law on single-use plastic prohibition created opportunities for entrepreneurs to invest in alternative packaging materials. It has also earned the country a reputation as one of the cleanest countries in Africa. And in 2008, Kigali was declared one of the cleanest cities in Africa by UN Habitat. In my country, in order to ensure green growth and environmental sustainability, environment and climate change are mainstreamed in each relevant sector's policies, strategies, and plan. There is another initiative I would like not to skip. It is the tax incentives for electrical vehicles that provide tax exemption and incentives to encourage the importation and use of electric vehicles to reduce reliance on fossil fuels, decrease greenhouse gas emissions, and promote cleaner transportation options. The challenges in our green energy transition, I will mention a few challenges that we are facing as a country and which are likely to be shared by many other countries. Financial constraints, first of all. The high upfront cost for renewable technologies remains prohibitive for many consumers and businesses, making it difficult to scale up green energy solutions. Technological barriers. Developing the necessary infrastructure such as grid expansion and energy storage systems requires significant investment and technological expertise. Capacity building. The need for a consistent capacity building mechanism to ensure skilled professionals that are available to implement and maintain green energy projects. Another constraint is the sufficient implementation of international commitments. Financial commitments made during high-level international conferences on environment and climate change are barely honored. Finally, the fact that Rwanda is at the receiving end of the big polluters. While we have no control over the situation, thus hindering whichever initiatives and programs locally undertaken. To conclude, I say that Rwanda is committed to play its part within its limited resources while contributing to the planet collective action. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this really insightful presentation and thoughts. And I think the situation in many other African, but also European countries is rather similar. So we will now move to Europe, and I do apologize, I should mention at the beginning, and I didn't, that Ms. President of the National Assembly will have to leave us a bit sooner, 11:15, since she has to attend the session. Yes. So, Ms. President, green transition has been a flagship of the European Commission in the current mandate. Why it is important, I believe, you believe it is important, that it stays so in the next one as well. We are approaching European elections, so some things may change.
Yes, of course it is important. First, let me commend Rwanda, a small African country, for all its work that it has been doing and it is still doing regarding green transition and climate change, and trying to do its best to help this planet. Slovenia is also a small country, and yes, we are not, I dare to say also Slovenia, we are not great polluters, but we are the ones who are affected. Slovenia, for example, was affected by huge floodings last summer, and these natural disasters will just continue if we don't do something. And I have to say that unfortunately, according to recent information, the EU's new strategic agenda no longer emphasizes green transition and the importance of addressing the climate crisis, which I, as I said, find very much disappointing. And I also, it makes me quite not only disappointed but mad that some European political parties demonize this topic and use it as a communication strategy in the current pre-election period, which is not only unacceptable, this is immoral. And we should all have in mind that the climate changes are here and the green transition is a must. It's not something that we will choose. First, we will have to adapt to climate changes, and then we'll have to make sure that it doesn't get worse. And I don't think that there is any country in the world who has not yet been affected by climate change. And I'm also sure that almost all people want our future generations to live in healthy environments, to have good quality of air, to have drinking water, not to have the environment destroyed. And because if we don't deal with these problems, new problems will arise. Climate change is, I believe, also one of the reasons for so many wars, for economic crisis, and for pandemics. And so if we address the root, we might at least find part of the solution for all the conflicts in the world. If we don't address the root, then we are responsible. What this means, green transition, it means that we will have to get out of our comfort zones. It's not easy. It's not even easy for me, but it is not something that I will be able to choose. This is a must, because I want my children and your children to live in a healthy environment, not only in a healthy environment regarding nature and environment as such, but a healthy environment meaning in an environment where they feel safe, an environment free of disastrous pandemics, the environment that they will be able to live in relative social security. So that means environment without huge economic crisis, and especially with no wars. I have read the interview of our former president of the Republic, Mr. Milan Kucan, and he said that now there are so many wars in the world, you know, that this is really not a good time. You know, if we think that we are living in best times that humanity has ever lived in, it is not true. It is not the best times. Maybe we have the most material goods, but do these material goods contribute to our happiness? No, they don't. No, they don't. Because the more you have, the more you want. So we will have to learn to be happy with what we have. Because if we want more and take more from the environment and exploit the environment in a way that we have been doing for the past decades, we will find ourselves in a disaster. So, addressing climate change, we policymakers, we need to think long-term, despite our short-term political mandates. I am sure that there are politicians in the European Union, in Slovenia, in Africa, that are concerned and really care for the well-being of the future generations. And so there is still hope. I don't think the Europe will abandon green transition, not at all, because, as I said, it is a must, it's not a choice. So we need to ensure that overall well-being is not compromised and that green transition does not also deepen social inequalities. That is also something with regard to distributing the burden of green transition, because green transition, as I said, will push us out of our comfort zones, will be the cost that we will have to pay, and this will have to be equal. The cost will have to be equal for everyone. as we have already heard, the cost of climate change are falling on those most vulnerable. So we need to step together and build these friendships. For example, Europe will have to look beyond its borders to Africa, to South America, to Asia, because we all live in the same planet. And that as much space as we have, there will be no more space. So we will need to work together. But as I said, the biggest change that we will have to make first is to change our way of thinking. The way of thinking. And then everything will follow.
Thank you so much. Minister Kalongashawa, your colleague, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, was very clear in her statements at the last Africa Day conference that climate change-related natural disasters, you mentioned them as well, are one of the biggest obstacles for faster economic development. What would be your message to Europe and global community, and how to use, as you are a Minister of Information and Digitalization, how to use digitalization and social media, for example, and other forms of information for the benefit of green transition and sustainable development?
Thank you very much. I like the question that you have posed, which is to say the message that I have to Europe and the global community. When the Deputy Prime Minister was making her opening remarks, she did say that there is a higher chunk of the suffering due to climate-induced disasters being faced by other nations, and there are others that are higher contributors to the climate degradation. She also touched on that Slovenia is not one of the major contributors. Slovenia is finding herself in the position of a victim as well. But all of us sitting here, we know that there are huge contributors to this. And this debate is deliberately avoided in some discussions. And if we continue to skirt around these issues when we meet at international fora like this, then the whole talk about green transitioning will be a mere joke. We have to begin to be real. When we talk about problems, let's look at the root cause of the problem, nip that in the bud, and make sure that we move forward in a spirited manner, that we do not want a continuation of the same. My message, as alluded to earlier on by those that have spoken before me, there is a human contribution to this whole thing we are talking about. And it will take humans as well to reverse the whole problem. And in that process, whether there is a higher contributor and there is a severe sufferer somewhere, all of us have to hold hands and bring solutions. And in holding hands to bring solutions, if you are having the capacity to produce smart machinery, climate-resilient infrastructure, which is a big challenge in our side, because whenever we are hit, we are talking of roads being cut off, bridges being cut off, railway networks being cut off. For a population like Malawi, where over 80% live in the remote area, and these are the farmers that feed the nation, if they are cut off, then the whole economic fiber of the country is cut off, it's paralyzed. When we paralyze those people, there is no productivity, we become beggars. So if you are producing smart engineering, green engineering, you have technologies in Europe countries. If we do not transfer the same to Africans, if we do not make that affordable to Africa, then the other countries will be going green alone. You will leave everyone behind. If you're producing machinery in Europe, I know Slovenia is very good at that as well. If you produce smart cars, electric cars in Europe, and they are not affordable in Africa, then you are going green alone. You're not going with us. So the same way we have destroyed the climate together, there is no running away. Let's repair it together. If you have reliable internet, for instance, in Europe, and we do not have reliable internet in Africa, you have early warning signals of all these disasters before they happen. We do not have early warning signals for the disasters before they happen in Malawi, in Tanzania, in Kenya, in Rwanda, in Zambia, in Zimbabwe. If we do not have that capacity, we wait until we are hit, then we call on your doors that you respond to us with aid. Then we're not going green together. We have to transition together. In Malawi, we are pursuing a green transition strategy, which we believe will help us to build our businesses, but also our industries, while also ensuring that we are responsive to climatic shocks and we are resilient in the face of climatic shocks, because these are obviously here to stay. So we are also looking at our energy mix, making sure that we diversify to other modes of energy, like solar and wind energy. We have now 2 solar plants that we've added to the grid, and we are in the process of building 1 wind farm that is also going to be added to the grid very soon. We believe that with all these and the building of climate-resilient infrastructures, which also has a burden on our economies, as my dear colleague did say, whenever we talk of building climate-resilient infrastructure, then it becomes an issue of cost. Where we do not have the cost, then we knock on doors for assistance. But the efforts that we are making, I also want to commend my colleague from Rwanda. They are indeed shining. They are doing good in areas of infrastructure. I mean, in areas of technology, for example. We usually visit Rwanda, and there is always something to borrow from there. But we would want to believe that if this kind of environment that exists in Rwanda, in the areas of ICT, for example, if the same could be replicated in the regions, because some of the success stories that they are recording are as a result of collaborations with other countries, and some of those countries are European countries. If the collaboration that you did touch on, that you're having with Rwanda, you're having with Kenya, and some other few countries that you mentioned, if the same could be expanded down south to countries like Malawi, definitely we should be singing a song of success. So my major message to the continent and to European countries is that we have destroyed this together, and someone somewhere has had a higher contribution to the destruction, but there is someone somewhere severely suffering the impacts of this. We are using social media and other forms of communication, of course, to share information about climate change issues, raising civic awareness, but also ensuring that when people are going further into practicing, say, areas of agriculture, mining, and others, they do apply modern technologies to the same. Challenges that we do face are some of which that I've already touched on, but in the area of telecommunication, for example, which is very vital if we are really to transit together, Malawi is a mountainous terrain in some parts of the country, just like some of the countries in that region of Africa. And obviously, telecommunication is a hurdle. We rely on erecting network towers. You can't lay fiber throughout the country. It's a challenge. And that 80% of people, their income levels are low. They're in the remote. They can't afford smart devices. So when you're talking all these, but we've left out someone who cannot afford to get a smart device on which he can access this information, then we'll be discussing here when the actual target is not part of the conversation. So we have to bring everyone into this conversation. And for everyone to be brought on this conversation in a world of technology, we have to make sure that everyone is connected. There is a reliable network, there is connectivity, there is affordability of smart gadgets. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed for this very important view on how to go ahead. Minister Fajon, the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution has become a key topic for the global community. How can Slovenia contribute to a more efficient solution to this crisis?
Let me briefly reflect what Minister just said, because I think it's very important, and I pick up that sentence. We must transition together and not leave anyone behind. I think this is important to be aware of. If you look today global, you have China, you have America, you have Europe, the biggest polluters, the biggest consumers, and the most affected parts of the world are the other most already vulnerable parts of the world. That is why it's so important that we understand that also climate change poses huge security risks. And as a society, everyone has its own task, homework to do, also as individuals. We are not doing enough to keep 1.5 degrees, what is the scientific explanation that is still safe for our planet. Far away. There is prediction that in less than 5 years we reach beyond 1.5 in global warming. That is a danger to our planet. Now, you asked me about Slovenia, and I'll come back to security risk and climate change, because this is today very much also reflecting in a Security Council work. But on the national level, we like to promote Slovenia as a green country, as a country with a lot of forests, with a clean air, with a clean water, even written in our constitution, the right to the access of a healthy and quality water. But we don't use well enough, or we are not ambitious enough. It's always related to financial costs, as you mentioned before, the wind, the water, the sun. And we are trying to invest now more in renewables in the long term, and also in a circular economy. And we also, and I'm happy to say, to announce that we are trying to adopt the first ever climate law in Slovenia. That will bring certain changes, but first it starts also in the mindset, what we can do as individuals. On a global engagement, that this is also what you were mentioning, COP28 was not ambitious enough, and we wish to see COP29 much more ambitious, especially when you speak about just green transition. Loss and damage fund was a positive result of a COP28, and Slovenia contributed 1.5 million euros to loss and damage fund, and also to green climate fund additional 1.5 million euros, according to our capacities. But this is exactly in terms of not to leave anyone behind, how to adjust this and make just green transition. The Summit of the Future that will take place in September in New York is also a very important discussion and contribution in relation how to tackle climate change, to prevent conflicts, to protect population. It's also extremely important. And Slovenia, as I said before, in Security Council, it's more and more topics related also to climate change. We took as thematic priorities climate and water security challenges, together with, of course, conflict prevention. So if you talk about water diplomacy, if you manage well water resources, transboundary, you can also manage better conflict prevention and protect population. You spoke about know-how and how we can better use technologies or what we do have available. I mentioned before the project in Kenya, that where we, Vesolje Sea, can control with drones what can be the effect of climate change prognosis on the population on the ground next to the rivers or so. So we have to share this know-how, we have to help each other and work together to prevent and protect our environment and be much more ambitious. Slovenia will host the 10th meeting of the parties of the Water Convention in October this year in Ljubljana, which will be also important in terms when I was speaking about this transboundary, how to cooperate to better manage water resources and prevent conflicts. And on solidarity, I wish to say, because in Slovenia, we also, you said, we are vulnerable to the extent that we were not familiar before. We had last 2 years twice extreme weather conditions. Last year, extreme floods. A year before, extreme droughts with forest fires. So what we learned is one thing, solidarity. That was crucial, that gave hope to our population, that other countries, other stakeholders immediately offered us support to help most vulnerable. But we also learned that extreme weather conditions, we are not well prepared. We have to do much more. And this is why this is so important topic to tackle, and especially knowing how it's also affecting security in the planet. And I think to conclude, on gender, human rights, I wish to say also one element that was not touched upon, but I believe it's quite important. Women and girls are very powerful, transformative agents of change who should be also engaged in those processes. Primarily they are engaged as victims, but they have to be equal partners, indispensable, and leaders in the transition to a very just and sustainable future. This is related also to Women, Peace, Security agenda that covers the aspects that we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Ms. Delere, Minister Fajon has touched upon security implication of the global climate crisis. You mentioned it briefly in your first intervention. But what is your take on that in frame of the EU approach to Sahel? This is your area of work. You cooperate very closely. So I would be grateful for your views.
Thank you very much. I would like to start taking you with me to the Sahel. I went on the Lake Chad, and the Lake Chad is one of the examples of the effects of climate change, because the surface of the lake has been reduced dramatically over the years, and this is an effect of climate change. And when I went on the Lake Chad, I realized that beside the fact that Boko Haram is hiding on the island of the Lake Chad, and as European Union, we finance pirogues and other instruments to fight against terrorists. The communities living on the Lake Chad, they live in the most extreme conditions I've ever seen, with very severe droughts. And we finance projects for agriculture to fight against this, for the subsistence of the communities. But every time they cultivate something, strong winds full of salt arrive and the cultivations are destroyed, just to give you an example. And in the same period, I went back to the capital of Chad, N'Djamena, and unfortunately I saw that only a few kilometers away there were big floods, so there were people displaced. The UNHCR had to react immediately. We, European Union, had to react immediately to the emergency, and I was feeling in despair. But then I also want to take you, for instance, to Niger. Before the latest coup d'etat, which took place in July, we had just inaugurated with the High Representative of the European Union and the president that was at that time in power, Bazoum, a big power plant made of 56,000 solar panels to electrify a third of the capital on N'Djamena. Meaning the minister from Malawi was mentioning the problems with electricity and connection. This is the huge problem of Africa, and I think Rwanda is solving the problem, but still there. And therefore, to provide electricity is a way of promoting, of course, clean electricity and also, of course, jobs and opportunities. And then I want to say another positive thing. In Mali, for instance, we are financing a huge amount of projects. One of these I visited recently, trying to promote agriculture that is resistant to attacks. And for instance, agriculture of cultivating peanuts that are resistant to some diseases, And we finance also workshops and laboratories to make sure that research can also help to find the proper solution for agriculture. Why I say this? Because on one hand, we are going as European Union from despair sometimes to somehow faith in the future. But the most important thing is that we continue to insist. We are convinced that we have to remain engaged always, and we also have to invest a lot, as we have done so far. And this we do together with the African Union, for instance. Well, the minister was saying transition together, yes. And this is why I have to tell you that the green growth is an absolute priority of our partnership with the African Union. Not only with the African Union, but with each partner we have in the continent of Africa, and of course, in particular in the Sahel, that is for us at the moment the most delicate area, the most complex area for a number of reasons. So when I was talking about the system, the need for a system at the beginning, is because if you look at it, it's something like an equation. You know, you have climate change that affects communities. Communities become more vulnerable. Terrorists take advantage of the vulnerability. There are a number of displaced people. Societies are disrupted. It's very difficult for young people to find any sort of opportunity. So there is forced migration, because migration sometimes is a choice that is made with great pain and with a difficult decision. Not only governance is completely absent, there is no access to basic services, so the situation is very, very, very difficult. What does the European Union? We don't think that we can find a solution in one day, of course, but I just want to tell you that we are the largest contributor of public climate finance. Especially in 2023, I have some data, we spent 28, also 29 billion euro to finance public climate initiatives in developing economies. Sorry. And this, I think, is a very good sign that we are aware of the need to work together. Of course, we have big ideas, such as, for instance, the Great Green Wall, that is a sort of belt that goes all the way, all through Africa, 7,000 kilometers, 15 kilometers wide. And I think that this will be a good opportunity. But the most important thing is to understand also the mentality of the populations and the actual needs of the population. I was reading a study on remittances, and I discovered that, for instance, all the remittances from African diasporas to Africa go mainly for 80% to agriculture, because agriculture is still the most important thing. This is why the European Union is really working on land restoration, and we are doing a lot on this. When you work on land restoration, which is related to climate change, also to green economy, because of course you guarantee a system of social accommodation of all the needs, we also mean jobs. You were talking about women and girls, Minister. Thank you for mentioning that, because we invest a lot in women in communities. We would like to guarantee to girls the opportunity to be contributors to society, and we are trying to do a lot. But in general, we are also investing very much in the youth, because they can really contribute and give as a big and formidable human resource and opportunity. Going towards the end of my contribution, of course, I could mention a huge number of projects. I only want to mention the Global Gateway that was mentioned before. The Global Gateway is important. It's also sponsoring this beautiful event, for which I really thank Slovenia. And I always say that Slovenia is a small country, but the importance of countries is not proportional to the surface of the country itself, because Slovenia has a huge political importance in these things, and it's demonstrating it today, so I really want to thank you for this. But in terms of the Global Gateway, we have changed our mentality in the European Union. We have finally understood that we also have to invest in infrastructure, and this is why we made this beautiful power plant in Niger. We also have to invest in long-term perspectives, and especially in sustainability. I conclude with some suggestions that we can all share together, and we discuss it all the time. I just come from Burkina, where I was yesterday, Burkina Faso. We have to invest, of course, more in the platform for disaster and displacement. We have to invest more in governance, because we have seen that governance, unfortunately, is the big problem of Africa. We have to exchange more in terms of knowledge. We have to have an approach more result-based, in the sense that we need to discuss with our partners more what is their awareness and what kind of things are needed. And of course, work in rural areas, urban areas, allow more centralization of governance, but also decentralization to allow remote areas to have their own opportunities to develop. So there is a lot to say. Our friends from Africa share these opinions with me, I'm sure. But what I think is important is that the European Union is a reliable partner. And I think that we have gone a long way. Sometimes my friend Moussa Faki recalls the 60s, and when there was a completely different situation in terms of partnership between the European Union and Africa. Now we are in 2024, and I think we have learned the lesson first. And this is something of which I'm proud. So I conclude by saying that yes, transition together, it is an interest of both of us, the Africans and the Europeans. Of course, we have not solved the problems, but I think we are going in the right direction. The most important thing is we need you to tell us how to help you. Because in the way we help you, we also help ourselves, and you help us. So it's a system that we have to create by which we can really solve the problems in a sustainable way. And if you allow me, the two big challenges for this century are sustainability, which is very difficult to obtain also because we are always busy trying to tackle emergencies, and human rights, which is something that is losing its importance, and it's an element of development, because human rights guarantee that societies are calm, they are not angry with the central governments, and also human rights allow every individual to express its own capabilities and skills, and therefore we have to fight for these two major things, and thank you to Slovenia for being so sensitive. Human rights and sustainability for a green future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, when it comes to human rights, Slovenia is a sort of a champion in advancing the right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. We have it in the Constitution since ever, practically, and internationally we believe that this is important part of, when we speak about rights-based approach, that this is important part of the story that we discussed today. But before asking distinguished panelists to comment on what we have heard, I would open the discussion for the public to take one or two questions in order to be able for all of you to respond. If there is any question, yes, please, gentlemen, there. Is there a microphone for? It's coming.
Merci. Je parle en français parce que j'ai eu, mon nom c'est écrit France, malgré le fait que je suis du Mali et puis de la Slovénie, ben, donc je vais utiliser la langue française. Bon, pour être plus confortable, je peux essayer aussi en anglais parce que je vois que beaucoup de gens...
I think it would be
okay.
in English.
Non, oui, je vais essayer en anglais. Mon anglais n'est pas aussi... My English is not so good, but I will try. My name is Ibrahim Nuhu. I'm living in Slovenia. I came here to study forestry, and I'm living here for almost 46 years. And I'm a Slovene, very proud to be also Slovene. And here, I just want to, I'm from Sahel also. When in my study time, I had in the schools of Slovenia, some courses about the ecological problem in Sahel. And after we changed it in ecological challenge in Sahel. When we are talking about Sahel, the first thing that we have to have in mind, Sahel is so big to talk about Sahel. We have to talk about the countries of Sahel. Sahel is just an Arabian name for the south part of desert of Sahara. So when we are sitting here, because the aim of this panel or this conference is that Africa and Europe will talk on the basis of a win-win situation. Not that Europe have to master us what we have to do and vice versa. First thing, because I'm from Sahel and I'm very, the problem in Sahel is very hot for us. The first thing is that in Sahel, when we have to think about green transition, we have to think about ecological transition, because we have a lot of ecological issues. And the first thing we have to do in Sahel is to have peace in Sahel. Many countries in Sahel do not have peace. And people are suffering because there is no peace. And some countries from Europe are those who make these troubles in Africa, in Sahel. Thanks God, from Mali, we say France to, I have France bed here, but France will have to go to from Mali, and they will go from Niger, and I hope that they will go from Chad, and from this we can talk about ecological transition in Sahel. When we are sitting, Europeans and Africans, we must know that we may have the same problems, but we don't have the same issues. You can't compare Slovenia with high level of forest, with Mali, with desert. We can't compare Niger, in where people don't have school, with Slovenia or Germany, where schools are doing well. So if you are talking now, that I just go to my ambassador, the minister from Malawi. He did with good issues. We have to challenge our problems, but the homework must be done in Africa. The homework must be done in Africa. Then, at this way, that Europe can help or can interfere, because we may not accept that Europe have reason to interfere in our problems. Some time ago, it was democracy. And at the end of the day, we say that a European country don't just export travelers in Africa, especially in Mali. Now, green transition. Green transition can be for me just like moda.
I will have
moda.
to... Yeah.
La mode. C'est comme la mode.
The president will have to leave in...
No.
Can I just comment? I have a comment on your comment, and I will leave the word to you then, because then I have to go because the parliament is in sitting. But I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Europe cannot do something and then tell Africa to do the same, because you cannot compare the countries, and we have to learn from each other. And that I really also commend our Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we are good friends, and we both agree that we really must look into Africa, connect to African countries, and learn also from African countries, so that we learn from you, know your circumstances, you learn from us. But we are a small country. We are like-minded countries here, two from Africa, two small countries from Africa, one from Europe. And I know that what we are talking about here will not be enough, because the big countries, the really big polluters, don't change their way, and they don't acknowledge, some of them, that climate change is a fact, and that we are the ones the most affected. And please, this is my point of view. It is an insult to human mind to minimize the impact of climate change, really. So for me, you know, as I said, it is immoral that some parties minimize the impact of climate change, or even build their policy on denying climate change. Such as the speeches here have shown, and what you have also mentioned, climate change causes disasters, even bigger disasters. Yes, in past, the Europeans have done a lot of damage to Africa. a lot of damage to Africa. And even now, they are also doing some damage, but not directly as they have in the past. They are doing it indirectly with polluting the environment that Africa suffers. And these disasters are one of the, the disasters, natural disasters, are one of the main reasons, as I said, for economic crisis, social crisis, conflicts that lead to wars, new pandemics, and so on. But unfortunately, my point of view again, in a capital-driven economy, this is the economy that benefits the rich, and the rich get even more powerful. And these are the economies that brutally exploit natural resources regardless of the pollution that they cause. In such an economy, it is extremely hard to bring awareness to people. And now I believe that the small countries are the most vulnerable countries are doing this, such as we are here, doing this, bring awareness to people. This is a fact, and this will affect us. But we need to reach the countries that are really the big polluters and the ones that are denying this. How are we going to do that? How? There are no big countries here, you know, the big polluters who would listen to us. So we need to speak louder. We need to speak louder. Yes. I'm so sorry that I have to leave you now.
No.
But the parliament is also discussing green transition. So thank you so much. I'm sorry I have taken the word to you.
I'm very
giving you the word back. Thank you.
I will end because I know that.
Yes, please do. Yeah.
I will end to say that in fact in Sahel, I'm talking about Sahel. Okay, I will end with this that. Countries like Slovenia have a lot of knowledge, but that is for our colleagues from Africa, that we are here as African diaspora to transfer this knowledge to Africa. We are here. And believe me, if you see some country like Slovenia, which is a lot of forests, thank you, madam, for your intervention. I'm very pleased and I'm very happy. Yeah. I will stop because I get confused now.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I will return to the panelists. Perhaps I will ask. Okay. Yeah, we can have another 2 questions, and then we will have to close the session. So please, lady in the second row.
I can stand up.
Yes.
No,
it's the mic is here.
The mic is here. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Maimunata Ouattara, Ambassador of Burkina Faso to Slovenia. I'm happy that Madam Representative for the Sahel is here and coming from Burkina Faso. Shows she has witnessed the climate change aftermath in Burkina Faso in many ways. As she said, it's a complex situation. Having said that, I would like to say that this conference is timely. It came at the right time because there is a need to share experience on common issues, and this is a common issue. Thank you very much for organizing this, for providing this platform of exchange of views and experiences. I think you have said it, all of you. We need to prioritize. We need to do our homework as Africa. We need to learn from the outer world, and as the outer world, including Slovenia, will learn from us. Women, girls, youth are the creative mind of Africa, and they are at the center, at the core of the change within the continent. What I would like to commend also is the continental and regional approach to this issue, working hand in hand with the African Union, because this is where we have crafted our flagship programs. And when we go to the countries, we can take into account the specificities. Otherwise, the continent has a policy, a climate adaptation strategy that works for the whole continent. And the Speaker of the National Assembly has said it. We have to speak louder, but in one voice. In the face of the great, the big polluters. And women, girls, and the youth, the future of a human being will be the game changers. Thank you very much for convening this conference.
Thank you very much for your comment. Can you just pass the mic to the gentleman just next to, and then we will go back to the.
Thank you very much, and my question will be very short. I've listened to all the contributions, and we are speaking the same thing, that we have to fight this climate change together. One thing that I want to contribute here is that in Africa, there is a lot of land that is bare, not occupied, and we could use the same to plant trees and bamboos, so that, because the bamboos are the greatest absorbers of carbon also, and we use that also for carbon credit. But for us to be able to do that, we need to collaborate, because in Africa, also like in Malawi, there is so high unemployment among the youth. So we can use the youth to do reforestation, to plant trees and ask them to take care of the trees and put a bet to it to say, if you take care of the trees until they grow, we'll give you so much money, then you have self-employment. But at the same time, we are fighting the issue of climate change. But for us to do that, all of us, the small countries, like you have said, we should collaborate and do a collaborative effort to approach the big countries, those that indeed pollute, and to get resources from them and use those resources and plant the trees in all areas. And I think I've seen Ljubljana is very green. So in Malawi also we'll plant trees in the cities. Everywhere where there is land unoccupied, we will plant trees. And we have learned with my honorable minister, we will do the same. And we can work together, help us to plant trees in Lilongwe city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the lady there in the fourth row, and then we really have to go back to the.
Thank you, through you, moderator. Thank you, honorable members in the August House. I'm Alice Mashinga, the ambassador of Zimbabwe to Slovenia, and I thank you so much for this conference, which is quite inspiring. And I was listening carefully, and from my brothers and sisters from Africa. And just want to add, maybe it's a question, a comment, or something just to say, there is this notion that as Africa, we still need to be industrialized. We still need to grow our economies. And we acknowledge that renewable energies on their own cannot achieve the industrialization pillar for us. And at the same time, we acknowledge also the effects of climate change on our economies and our people. And there is need for a balance. And as we move forward, as we transition, there is also the notion that those who can collaborate with us or partner us can no longer support us in terms of the fossil fuels, the energies. And at the same time, it's detrimental to whatever the countries would want to achieve. So as countries in Africa, we are at a dilemma of trying to balance these two and trying also to say at the same time we progress parallel, yes, embracing green energies, but at the same time, our people need to live and eat, and our industries still need to grow. So maybe if there's a comment of going forward in the future to have something practical for African countries to say, yes, we embrace this, but at the same time, there is need for people to put food on their tables. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would go back now to the distinguished panelists and ask them to perhaps comment on what has been heard either from other panelists or from the public, but also perhaps to reflect a bit on regional cooperation, because we have spoken about national, everyone's task in national terms, about global views. Of course, some aspects of regional cooperation has been touched upon, but I think we can explore it a bit more if time permits. But otherwise, please do comment, do come with perhaps further ideas of yours. Ms. Del Rey, I will start with you with that one.
Thank you very much. 2 or 3 concepts very quickly. I want to answer to our brother from Mali. I don't see him. I just wanted to say that, yes, okay, thank you. All right. You don't need to stay. No, I just wanted to say that, yes, it is true. Of course, there are differences, but we are not afraid of differences in terms of composition of land and challenges, because together we can find solutions. And I want to mention very clearly, work together in partnership with the countries. So when we talk about Mali, I was there recently. I spoke to all the ministers, my friend, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Diop. We discussed all the different projects, what we shall do, what we should do in our partnership. And just want to mention that we have 900 million euro of projects ongoing in Mali at the moment, financed by the European Union. Not to mention the fact that in terms of humanitarian aid, the European Union, I'm proud to say, is not only the main provider at global level, but also the main provider in the Sahel, and in Mali in particular, because the security challenges are very, very important. So I want to say that we do everything in cooperation, deciding together. And I want to add, I know there are members of NGOs or, as we say today, organization of civil society here. We have NGOs that have been working in each country of Africa and in the Sahel and Mali for decades. And they always work in collaboration with local communities. So we work together on the ground with, of course, approval and contracts made at a local administrative level. So it's a partnership. 2 more very quick things. Of course, I agree, we need jobs. We need to create a system, as I said, as a first word of my intervention today. Just to give you an example, with our projects, Regreening Africa, which is concentrating on Africa land problems, we have restored 1 million hectares of land, which means jobs. And with the Great Green Wall, we have already created 120,000 jobs for Africans, of course, to, of course, work in this green economy. I just want to tell you that the security problems are immense, and this is why it is difficult to implement sustainability. Because in Burkina Faso, our friend from Burkina, I was there yesterday with all your ministers, and I know the president as well. Of course, there are at the moment something like 2 million displaced persons. Of course, some are returning thanks to the action of the government at the moment, but there are many, many problems. And of course, there are also problems of governance, because the transition has not ended yet. We have difficulty in interacting with the military junta, which has not ended the transition. So there are political problems as well. We need to find an harmony, but this is what we do. I was there yesterday to discuss all these problems. So to think that the European Union is acting on its own is wrong, because we work together all the time. And we can demonstrate it also by the fact that our relationship is very strong. Of course, there are problems, but this is not something that is going to create an obstacle for our action, because we are strongly convinced that unless we do things together, we cannot solve the problems. And it is our principle, but it is also in our interest, because we know for a fact that our future is with Africa, and this is why we want to help Africa to overcome the problems, because we want to work on the same level. We have to be equal in our conditions of living, to make sure that in the future we can really build a better world. It sounds rhetoric, but it is a reality. We need to be equal in opportunities. This is something that we have in mind. Not easy, but I can tell you that the only way to achieve this is through our partnership. And partnership needs two to implement it. So we are trying to build very solid relationships. This is why the European Union, even in difficult times when there are difficult challenges at political level, continues the dialogue, continues the partnership, continues to remain engaged. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister, what would you be willing to add to the discussion?
Thank you very much. I think we've had very candid discussions, and I like the openness in which we have held these discussions. We seem to be pointing towards the direction of saying, let us continue with the conversation. Let us build strong partnerships. Let us all be in this fight. If it were time for questions among the panelists, I would have started with asking our EU representative to say, do you agree with what the parliamentary president did say before she left, to say, Europe has done much damage to Africa before. We seem to be in agreement on that. And she went further to say, and Europe continues to cause much damage on Africa to this very day. And I hear you say, our future lies in Africa. If we say there is, if that statement is something to go by, then we need to really fine-tune our focus towards Africa and go towards Africa, or approach Africa as a partner. No one should be on the receiving end. Let us build sustainable, mutually beneficial partnerships between Africa and Europe. In that statement to say Europe has done much damage to Africa, it will take us a whole decade talking about it if we are to open page by page. But the best would be today, let's build partnerships that benefit both sides. If anything, the whaling mines are in Africa. The victims have been Africa. If anything, there is need to soothe those wounds. As we are saying now, in Malawi, for example, the past 4 years, we've declared 4 state of emergencies. As we speak, 23 out of the 28 districts have been declared disaster areas. All these owing to the effects of climatic shocks. Last year, the Cyclone Freddy alone, we lost 679 lives. 535 are still missing. 679,000 households were destroyed completely. 2 million farming households were rendered destitute. They harvested nothing. Then we keep knocking on doors for assistance. If this was the other way around, that Africa was the major contributor to environmental degradation and climatic pollution, definitely Africa would have been taken to court. Here we are. We don't want to be coming to conversations where all we see is the beautiful roads and sleeping in the hotels, boarding aircrafts and sitting in the business class. No. These conversations must take a different approach. When we say someone has been a major contributor to these sufferings, where are we taking the next layer of the conversation? Because we seem to be agreeing here. Slovenia is equally a victim. A small country, talking with other small countries that have also suffered. Then from here, where do we go? From here, where do we go? How do we talk to the big foot? How do we make our voice known to those that continue to affect the climate and they refuse or they miniature the impacts of climatic change in their policy developments? How do we make our voices heard? Because as we speak, people are dying. The water levels, for example, in Malawi now are beyond unprecedented levels. Tanzania is flooding. Kenya is flooding. Malawi is flooding. The Southern Africa, Mozambique, is flooding. Zimbabwe is having a share of these shocks. Then we come and we talk. Next time we come and we talk. Where are we going with this conversation? September, UNGA. Who stands in there and talks about these issues? To say we are meeting, people are dying, they're losing their families, they're losing their livelihood. but then it ends at conversation level. We need to build strong partnerships. We need to continue with strong conversations, not only for the sake of conversing, but pushing for policies to be developed that will benefit everyone. But I want to thank the Slovenia government, through you, Madam Deputy Prime Minister, for organizing this platform that we can discuss this kind of a topic right on the European soils. I want to thank you, receive my appreciation from President Lazarus Chakwera, President of the Republic of Malawi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for these very, very important messages. And I now turn to you, dear Honorable President, Speaker of the Parliament of Rwanda.
Yeah, thank you, Moderator. Before my closing thoughts, I would like to react on what have been said by my brother from Mali about peace and security in Sahel. I would like to mention that, in fact, many countries, in sub-Saharan countries, we are facing different challenges in terms of peace and security. But one should ask, why? Why are we facing those problems of peace and security? I would like to just say it is a matter of good governance. Concentrating on what the population, on the needs of the population, and bring them on board in whatever we are doing, in different programs we are shaping, in different policies, and whatever we do, we have to do together with the population with it. Concerning the intervention of Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Zimbabwe to Slovenia, it is doable, balancing industrialization in Africa and combating the bad effects of the climate change. We have to think together about new technologies that can mitigate the pollution. So it is doable if we put our efforts together. In closing, I would like to say that achieving successful green transition requires the concerted efforts of all countries all over the world. The developed countries, the developing countries, ensuring more equitable distribution of resources and opportunity to safeguard the planet for the future generation. And we need to keep the sense of urgency, focus, and shared responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Honorable Speaker. We have learned, I think, or listened to many, many important messages about being together in climate crisis, the need for strong and equal partnerships, the sense of urgency, the need for more technological cooperation, the importance of infrastructure, be it traffic infrastructure, telecommunication, energy infrastructure. So there were a lot of messages that are really important. We will prepare an outcome document with all these messages to serve us as a way forward, to serve us in our efforts. But in order to conclude, I would kindly ask Minister Fajon to say some final remarks of this first session.
I will be brief, but we heard a lot of very powerful and important messages, and thank you for that. And to conclude, we have to do our utmost to strengthen cooperation between Africa and Europe for the benefit for the people of our both continents. Climate change, it's a global challenge. It doesn't know the borders, and we have to act accordingly. And you mentioned a regional dimension, and I would like to give 2 examples from our region. Aftermath of the bloody wars in the territory of former Yugoslavia, there was the first ever agreement signed between the warring parties on the Sava River basin, how to manage transboundary the water together, and was the first ever agreement signed aftermath the wars. And after the floods in 2014 in Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, devastating floods, the 3 countries signed also the agreement on an early warning system. What I want to say, it's also important, the regional dimension, cooperation, and transboundary cooperation. And now just finally to come to the title of today's panel, Green Transition Together for a safe Europe and all for more invention, more solidarity, and better society. And this is my final conclusion, and thank you everyone for this lively and very timely debate.
Thank you very much. I sincerely thank dear panelists, distinguished guests, for their contributions. I would kindly invite you now to have a coffee break and be back, please, on another second panel, which will be interesting as well, on 11:30 sharp. Thank you very much.